that's one of the basics when we're talking about going back to basics is looking at sex. How are we defining sex?
Yeah. Yeah.
And how can we talk about sex outside of penis, vagina penetrative sex? Hello, welcome 2023 to Queer Relationships, Queer Joy.
Woohoo! We are here. We've
Yes.
officially, I think we've released already one in the new year, but we are now recording in the new year. We're officially there.
Yeah. Well, and I think that for me anyway, I am adjusting to the new year pretty much through all of January. So,
Yeah, definitely. Same.
oof. Well, we were just talking before I logged on that kind of a little tired today, feeling the adjustment of post holidays, even though today's I guess today's technically a federal holiday, but whatever.
Here we are.
Here we are. Here we are for updates. I have some
Yeah.
updates.
Should we do intros and then updates?
Okay, well, yes.
I haven't given up on us doing intros consistently yet.
I haven't given up on it, and I love how you bring it back because I'll just start blabbing and then 20 minutes later.
For sure.
Oh, well, and I remember one of my intentions was to get this quick and to the point. So let's see how I'll practice some more. My name is Keely C. Helmick. I'm a certified sex therapist, licensed professional counselor. I am the owner of Connective Therapy Collective. I am a queer, white, non-binary femme. I'm currently solo non-monogamy, and my back is getting better. I still am in recovery, but it's getting better. That's my updates. That's my intro.
Hey, so glad to hear that. Well, I'm Melissa DeSegurant, and I am licensed as a therapist working at Connective Therapy Collective. I see clients in Oregon and California. I'm white, I'm able-bodied, I'm bisexual, I'm a polyamorous person, and my gender is fluid and ever-changing. I use she and they pronouns.
Yay!
Woohoo!
All right. Well, so it is 2023.
Yeah.
What is going on in your life? What updates do you want to give since the last time?
Yeah. Oh boy. Yeah. Right before we hit record, it was like, oh, what are my updates? Well, I guess I'm have felt very disoriented in the last, I would say 2 weeks because of all of the weather that we experienced in the Pacific Northwest. My holiday plans were all canceled. And when I say canceled, it would have felt a lot easier to navigate if it was just canceled. I went through the whole 2 days of I went through, I think, 4 flights. I boarded my cats and then had to unboard them. It was a really big ordeal that for me was disorienting. And then trying to do the holidays, it was a big mess. I'm fine. I had a lovely time doing my solo thing, as I have done for now 3 years in a row for the holidays. And I was able to orient towards a lot of gratitude for, there's a lot of people, gosh, that had a lot of travel plans and things happen, and some really horrendous things happen with weather on the East Coast, especially. So I can very much be grateful for the holidays I did have. And there is the grief over seeing family and, missing yet another gathering for another year. So I'm just coming off of all of that. I had tried to reschedule plans for New Year's, and then that fell through too due to an illness in my family. So I am just over trying to go anywhere right now. I am staying here. And like I said, I think disoriented is the best thing I can say. It doesn't feel like it's super emotionally charged, but I'm okay. I'm doing well. I'm grateful for the things I have. I'm grateful that the holidays are behind us. It was a headache for me, and I'm glad it's done.
Yeah, it seemed like there was just so much going on. And my theme or my thought was that there was so much work and then not a lot of rewards for all the work because the storm hit so perfectly. And I will say I was not traveling, but had this whole wonderful Christmas planned out with Maine, and they got COVID. And I haven't seen them now for, I don't know, almost 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So get to see them after this recording, actually.
There you go.
Finally exchanged Christmas presents a week later. But in good queer fashion, good queer non-monogamous fashion, instead of seeing them, I had a friend who was in town, friend, former lover with her partner, and the two of them came and stopped by and hung out for a little bit. So that was fun. And
Yeah.
then just like general updates starting the new year. I was listening actually to the episode a couple weeks ago, and I did realize I don't know if I've said the update, but there's Texas is no more. So the person Texas, who I
Yeah.
knew
Yeah.
Texas.
No, not just getting rid of the whole state. Like we're done with Texas.
Well, I mean, I have some family members there, so maybe not, but sometimes I think sometimes we would be okay with that.
Some parts of Texas we love. We love if you're listening from Texas, please. We still love you.
Yay. Hey, there's some rad people in Dallas. We actually
Yeah.
had an interview from Dallas. My family is in Austin, and Austin is definitely a sanctuary for queer people.
So I've heard.
When I stepped into Austin, that was more queer to me than Portland. Like
Wow.
I walked into the information center and it was like, boom, a whole table of like rainbow queer stuff. It's so queer, so fucking queer.
Amazing.
Yeah. So hanging with Main. And then I don't know. I've had so many conversations about dating apps and I don't know. I'm not really on them right now, but I'm having fun like talking to people and their experiences. And I was very, very validated. Had a meetup last week with somebody who had similar experiences to me, having this whole like being slow and intentional with dating, and then the other people not responding in the same way to the slowness. And so I was very validated by that conversation. And in
That's
fact,
amazing.
I'm going to see that person again in a couple days. And so that was fun to talk about. Otherwise, I like what Channing Nicholas is saying, and just the astrologer. She's like, okay, go into 2023 slowly. And the start of 2023 is slower. I like that vibe.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that vibes with our topic today, kind of going back to basics around sex and slowing down and talking about some really simple concepts that are so essential that Emily Nagoski talks about and researchers around sex.
Simple concepts, but things that we forget and or never learned, because I've said this, I know, in a recent episode, maybe even last week, but I don't know why they called it sex education. I did not get an education around sex. I did not get an education as to how to have sex, why
No.
to have sex, what sex is about, what it can feel like none of that. I got like really bad abstinence training.
Abstinence. Yeah.
And not to mention, and I did say this before, but queer sex. I mean, I literally didn't even know how to have sex as a queer person that did not follow the script of what I thought, what I'd seen in movies, really. Because again, it's not like I was taught in school how to have sex.
Well, it's so concrete in the patriarchy where sex is not talked about outside of if there's a penis involved.
Right. Yeah.
And I'll get even more specific because even sex that's talked about with the penis involved, it's always very specific.
Right. Yeah.
So for folks that have penises, but either don't practice penetrative sex with their penis, or folks that don't have that, certain erection or there's all these specificities around it. And that is what we're taught. So yeah, people are like, what is sex? Or the cliche, how do lesbians have sex? How do, how do two people with vulvas have sex?
Yeah.
We're
It
not
can
taught
be done. Not that like any of you didn't know that, but
Well, and that's one of the basics when we're talking about going back to basics is looking at sex. How are we defining sex?
yeah. Yeah.
And how can we talk about sex outside of penis, vagina penetrative sex?
Right. Yeah. What is sex really? And yeah, what does it mean? Because people have very different opinions for I guess what it leaks into for me is the why question that I like to go back to so often. And why specifically sex? People have sex for lots of different reasons. Sometimes it's to like release anger or steam or stress. Sometimes it's to connect with someone. Sometimes it's to orgasm. Sometimes it's, to feel good in one's body. There's a lot of different reasons.
Sometimes it's go to sleep.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so it's all good, but it's good to know what your why is before you start engaging.
Yeah. So we wanted to review a couple of the concepts that Emily Nagoski isn't the original person thinking about this, but really says it so well in her book, Come As You Are. And the first concept is the gas pedal concept.
Mhm.
And so thinking about, because when I think about sex or I think about interacting sexually with ourselves or with somebody else, we're thinking about, as you said, the why.
Mhm.
And the gas pedal model really states that if you imagine desire or wanting to engage in sex the same as like a gas pedal in a car, well, the gas are the things that make you want to have sex, and the brakes are like the don't want to have sex.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. And I don't even know, there is a wonderful workbook that she made that goes with Come As You Are. Although I'm pretty sure she lists out so much in Come As You Are, you can actually do this exercise even without purchasing the workbook necessarily. But listing what are your accelerators and what are your brakes, and what's interesting is then if we look at people we might be in sexual connections with or relationships with, remembering we've all got a different system. My system, like my brakes are solid. I've got so many strong, wonderful brakes, and that has been something I say it now with a lot of pride and some humor, because in the past I have, without this analogy, I have really shamed myself for seeming to have so many quote unquote issues around sex, which make a lot of sense as a highly sensitive person, and I have a lot of sensory stuff that happens for me. So, like, yeah, okay, there's a lot of breaks. That's not something to shame myself about. That's just something to know so that I can communicate to partners who maybe aren't as used to working with systems with a lot of breaks, or like real heavy accelerator type people who like everything is a turn on, but like there's no breaks. We gotta
Yeah.
sort of train people how to work with us.
Well, I think something to notate as you're creating the list of what your brakes are and what your accelerators are, that can change over time.
Mhm.
That can change with different partners,
Yeah.
and that can change. The other piece to this is context.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so the examples when you think about like a turn on may be being touched in a certain way. But if you're in the middle of doing laundry or in the middle of doing something that you don't really enjoy doing or you're focused,
Yeah.
then even that certain type of touch or those certain kind of words said to you may not be a turn on in that
Right.
situation. And
Totally.
so that's like the next step. So you have these lists of accelerators and brakes. You look at that, you share that with your partners, and then you talk more about context.
Yeah. Yeah. This may prematurely get too like far into the next thing we were going to talk about, Keely, but what I think is also important is I have experienced this pitfall of communicating what accelerators might be there, and then how to really shut down response to watching somebody very deliberately, specifically do all those things. For example, for me, an accelerator might be like acts of service. It might be I come home and everything is done and dinner is being cooked. Like that might be a turn on. It is a turn on for me.
You're like, it is. It is.
And if I communicate that and I watch somebody, if I get this energy of they are doing this so I have sex with them rather than out of being an act of service, it becomes too goal oriented for me and it's no longer a turn on. And that can feel really frustrating, I think, to people who are like, I'm just trying to do the thing you said. But it is that what is the spirit of what you're doing? Are you doing an act of service as a gesture of love, or are you doing it because you want something from me? And it's this like exchange with a very specific goal in mind.
Well, and I think that piece, when Emily Nagoski talks about the concept, pleasure is the measure.
Mhm.
And when something is so goal oriented that it loses the pleasure piece.
Yeah.
Whereas, yeah, if a partner or some, a lover, sexual partner is doing certain things because they want to do that for you and they
Mhm.
know that you enjoy it,
Right.
regardless of the outcome, it is something that is kind and
Yeah,
an act of showing love, showing gratitude.
totally. Totally. Yeah. I mean, and getting even further into, sexual acts and how this can show up, I'm thinking about how many clients do I have that talk about the problematic nature of having a goal of orgasm, right?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I'm going to touch your body and do all these things to make you come. Well, sometimes if that's the goal, it's not going to happen. Like, how can we enjoy the pleasure in the moment? I'm going to do this because it's pleasurable for you and for me too. If orgasm happens, fine, but that doesn't necessarily need to be the goal for everyone.
Yeah, I wonder if we can list. I know some people will be sitting here and may really align with this idea of, oh, I can name, 20 breaks right now.
Yeah.
Like, I know how to name that. I
Yeah.
wonder if we can talk about some examples of breaks. I mean, I can say, I know for some people, certain smells, there's certain times of days, there's certain sensations. Some people are really focused on certain like parts of the house or certain places of having sex. I know recently we talked about neurodivergency and folks with ADHD, folks with autism, folks on the autism spectrum who have certain sensations and certain sensitivities to certain stimuli.
Mhm. Yeah.
Those can all be breaks.
Yeah. Yeah, you've talked, I know a lot about the sensory pieces, like things like sounds getting in the way, or being the possibility of being heard can be a break for people. It can also be things like we've talked about before, like naming body parts in a way that doesn't feel good to us. That could be a break,
That could
you
be a
know?
total shutdown, right? That, yes.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's a lot of different things. And again, the goal is not to paint breaks as a hindrance or a bad thing. It's like, yay, my system is telling me what's pleasurable and what's not.
And all the things we just named can also be accelerators.
Yeah.
Certain sounds, certain music, certain sounds, certain smells, certain
Mhm.
sensations,
Mhm.
gender affirming,
Yes.
certain names of, naming body parts or
Totally.
certain names, all of that can also be accelerators.
Hey, it's Cardinal, your behind the scenes buddy. I'd say what hits the gas for me is slowly running a hand down my spine. And a break is unexpected nudity or exposure, like dropping your robe after a shower. Keely and Jennifer, another therapist at Connective Therapy Collective, are hosting a one-day Sex Therapy 101 and 201 workshop for clinicians. It's worth 4 CEs, so if you're a mental health therapist who wants to guide your client through their own gas and brake pedals, or you know a therapist who wants to offer this healing modality, send them to the link in the episode description. All right, back to the show.
Yeah, so it's starting to get to know your own system. And I do like the point you made, Keely, that it's going to change. And that can get frustrating for us because it's like, I figured it out. Oh, wait. Let me think again. But it really can change. And that's why both the ability to reflect, but also the ability to communicate when things have changed. Those two things feel paramount.
And that, with listeners and people who have kids, that really can change things like whether kids are awake or asleep
Yeah.
or, and it can get really serious, when those aren't discussed. Because for some people, they're really just preoccupied thinking about other things and that they're not in the mood. Or they can, I think the other thing that we really want to emphasize is when we're talking about sex or talking about any kind of play with other people, that these accelerators and breaks can happen after the sexual situation has started. And so
Mhm.
it's also communicating. And I guess bringing up children made me really think about this because the example of people who have like a young child and maybe they're like, okay, the baby's down or the child's down and asleep.
Mhm.
And then they start, getting into it. And then they hear the child's up. And for one partner, they may be, oh, go back to sleep. Let's just get back into it.
Yeah.
And for another person, maybe like done. Like it just shut off.
It's so true. Yeah. Yeah. Oh gosh, bless you, you people with small children.
Well, and even if you don't have children, there's just things that can happen that we want to really validate. I mean, we're
Yeah.
always saying this, and it's just going to always be said, consent.
Yeah.
that these things can shift even midway.
Yeah. I'm laughing because I'm like debating how much of this I share. These are the moments where I become acutely aware that I am on a podcast. I will share just because it's hilarious and it is an example of an in the moment break as we're talking about. I have been trying some new things and without being too explicit, was in a situation over the weekend where I was not able to move my limbs, intentionally so, for pleasure-based reasons. And my cat decided that was a great time to jump on the bed.
Oh yeah. Oh
And I
yes,
was like,
animals.
oh, hell no. Like, cause no. And I needed to get help, like moving her away because that was not the time and place. And that was a major break for me. It didn't mean that the experience couldn't continue, but it did mean we needed to like, okay, let's get back into the mood here because that took me completely out of everything.
Totally. I, I've actually had a situation. I didn't realize the cat was in the bedroom with a former partner. The cat had gotten their claw in my partner's
No,
eye,
no.
like hooked. And we just like kept trying to like keep the situation going. And
Yeah.
at some point we're just like, okay, pause. Just too much. When the cat's hanging by its claw
No,
to my
that's yeah.
partner's thigh, it's just like, okay, we gotta reaffirm. We gotta readjust.
Yeah.
This was not consensual BDSM. Not consensual, intense sensations.
So things can come up in the moment that take you out of it, you know.
Yeah. And then so looking at accelerators, I mean, there's so many things and it's so personal.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing to think about the accelerators is this is the opportunity to really bring exploration into your play with your partners
Mhm.
because maybe you have a harder time identifying the accelerators. Like the breaks often can be much easier starting point for people when they're thinking about these things. And the opportunity to try new things, have a yes, no, maybe mindset.
Yeah.
And okay, I'll try this. And then again, being able to say, okay, nope, that's not working for me. Let's try something else.
Right. Yeah.
And for those, I think there is always a lot to be said about trying things with yourself. You know, if
Yeah.
you and developing, and again, it doesn't have to be focused on genitals. It can include your genitals, but playing touch, incorporating different touch and different activities with yourself and learning more about yourself throughout any kind of relationship dynamic, sexual dynamics. So that way you can verbalize that and you
Right.
can try it before you try it with someone. And obviously, you may like something with yourself, not with a partner. I mean, that can always
Totally.
happen too, of course.
Yeah.
But this idea of exploration and having ideas and those concepts, you know, people are sitting there, okay, not relying, it can be really simple. You know, it doesn't have to go straight to kink stuff. It doesn't have to go straight to when we think of like BDSM and like impact play and tying a partner up, which I mean, yay, but it doesn't have to go to that. It can just be trying out different music or incorporating music or
Totally.
thinking about slowing down if you're used to having, you know, certain type of sex, shifting it.
Yeah. Eye contact for some people can be an accelerator. For some people, it's a break. You know, it's just knowing. But yeah, I like what you said too about that self exploration. I know we promote that a lot. I mean, this is where fantasy becomes so useful and important. And again, not with the expectation that everything that you fantasize about in your mind is something you will want to do in this world in a physical way, but it can give you so much information, you
Yeah.
know? And gosh, even if you don't, like, for example, let's just say I fantasize about being tied up. However, when I'm actually tied up, that creates a trauma response. I don't like that. Say that's the scenario. You can play with invisible restraints where you are not tied up, but your hands are pinned down and you're pretending that they are, right? And even that might be too triggering for some people. That might not be it. It may be more about have the partner say, like, I love seeing you tied up like that, even if you're not tied up, right? Like, use your imagination and creativity here. You wouldn't believe how big of a turn on it is. And especially when we think about sex, like so much of it is mental.
Yeah. Yeah.
We can get overly focused on physical, like the body parts and especially the genitals, but like or orgasms in our brain, you know?
And this is where like novels, erotic, like reading books, reading chapters, listening to, and then, porn can come in handy. Beware or be the understanding of just because you saw it done by somebody, it may not translate the same way when you try with your partner. And I like how, because we're talking about Emma Nagoski so much today, she put it, she's saying watching porn and, having this expectation to do a certain sexual act is like if people are learning how to drive, comparing it to NASCAR drivers.
Right. Yeah.
Like they're professionals. So if you're going to get in a car and you're going to be driving a certain way, if you are not a trained NASCAR driver, don't expect to have that same experience.
Right. Right.
Watch porn, explore porn,
Yeah.
learn or have fun with the fantasy, but those are professionals doing those things. And they've had lots of practice and have a whole team of support helping them with that.
Right. And there's production and editing and voiceovers. And there's like a lot of other things that happen to make it look the way it does that you may not have a whole production team there to like, butter you up beforehand. And you might not have snacks.
Yeah.
Although having snacks that's a great idea. Stay hydrated, but yeah, you don't have the same production team, to make that experience happen.
So within this concept, so we have this, accelerator break concept, thinking about sex. And then there's also another concept that is talked a lot about and is really helpful for people framing because we have this expectation and the idea of responsive versus spontaneous desire.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so spontaneous desire, when we talk about that definition, is really conceptually the assumed, like we think, oh, you're just automatically ready to have sex. And we see that in all of the movies and we see it in TV shows, see it in porn. And spontaneous desire is just that idea that some people have a really like stimuli that is really accessible and pretty much always there. And the real life kind of scenario that we think about is, someone, partner's at home, another partner comes home from work or the two come home from work and it's like, ooh, I haven't seen my partner all day and gosh, they look cute right now. I want to have sex. Boom. And
I'm
then
ready.
People just want to like tear each other's clothes off and ready to go.
Yeah.
And some people are like that
Yeah.
for sure. But a lot of people aren't.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's spontaneous desire. Responsive desire is, may not even be thinking about sex, but then certain words, certain hand gestures, certain touch, certain smell, certain stimuli, like the word suggests, responding to something that then gets you in the mood for wanting to be sexual with your partners.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And again, if you can kind of put yourself in either one of those categories, the point is not to shame you for wherever you land. It's more information. I guess what I'm saying is there's nothing, it's not better to be spontaneous versus responsive or vice versa.
Yeah. Well, and I think that the nuance to this is it can be really tricky talking about this because most relationships that are longer term start off seeming that both partners are spontaneous desire because you have that newness, we call it NRE, new relationship energy. And you're like, oh, you see the person, it's all new and you want to have sex a lot. And then what often happens, and I mean, definitely the couples that are coming in for sex therapy will identify, yeah, we just want to have sex all the time. And then later down the road, you find that it's a spontaneous person and responsive person. Yeah. And there's so much shame around the responsive person because, oh, well, sex used to be like this. And it's like, well, they're actually a responsive desire type person. they just mimic more of spontaneous at the beginning.
Totally. And NRE can be a huge accelerator. It
Yeah.
certainly is for like most of the people I would say that I talk to. And so when NRE is not there, that's a powerful accelerator that is gone now. It doesn't mean that you have changed. It means that NRE has changed. It's not there anymore. And that's where being creative and some novelty can be super duper helpful. And I actually know couples that do the practice where they go out to a bar and pretend like they don't know each other and they re-meet and they recreate some of that NRA. And that's why I'm saying imagination can really take you a long way if you commit, you know?
And I think that's where then this idea of when you were talking earlier, being pressured or this balance of, okay, understanding when you do realize, if you realize that one person spontaneous, a person responsive, or even sometimes more challenging is the responsive and responsive person.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's interesting because then I hear people come in, speak like questions or things that people ask, and someone will be like, well, I'm just always the person initiating. And it's like, well, okay. Is that because you're the more spontaneous person in this dynamic?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then what meaning are you making of that? Because if we can just accept that our dynamic works best when this person initiates and this person responds, great, there's nothing to fix. It doesn't have to be even all the time. Just because like our brains say that everything should be perfectly even. Like,
Yeah.
no, it's fine if one person does all of the initiating as long as it's fine for both those people and we're clear on what the meaning is behind that.
Yeah. And noticing as we get more in these nuances of thinking about what is the narrative around this and
Right.
what is the dominant cultural narrative around the meanings and how we make meaning or have these assumptions around these different dynamics.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Yeah. I've heard the meaning making before. If like somebody isn't initiating, that means they don't want me.
Yeah.
Maybe not, you know? And it doesn't mean that it has to, like I said, it's okay if just one person is initiating. It's also okay if that doesn't work for the system and you all decide like, I know that I'm the more spontaneous person, but I really can't, I can't be the one initiating all the time. I do need somebody. And then that's a different discussion, you know?
Well, and then so when we're talking about responsive desire, then that is where, people don't like to say it, but scheduling sex or
Mhm.
scheduling connection times, that comes into play.
Mhm.
And really, and I say this all the time in therapy sessions where we have this idea that there's something like unsexy about scheduling sex. However, if you think about it, when you first start dating somebody, when you don't live with someone
Mhm.
and you're going on a date, isn't that kind of scheduling sex? You're doing this prep work, you're, getting your body ready, your mind ready.
Mhm.
You have quite a bit of time before you see this person that you've prepped your body to be in a pretty sexy space.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, when you schedule something, then you know exactly when foreplay happens, when aftercare happens. Like you can really orchestrate a beautiful experience.
And as you're saying this, it reminds me of so many things in the BDSM community that just gets it so well because any scene when you're practicing a kink scene is going to be well thought out and prepared.
Right. Right.
And that's some of the joy of it, like that
Right.
anticipation and
Yeah.
that planning and thinking about it can actually be its own
Yep.
foreplay.
Yep. That, as you're saying that, I think what I'm wanting to add is like, you may think that scheduling sex, for example, is not sexy. Challenge that for yourself. Just
Yeah.
because you think something doesn't mean it's true. So challenge that. Make it sexy. I bet you can. And again, it's fine if you decide that doesn't totally work for me, but we get so attached to these stories we have about ourselves and what works and what doesn't. And it's all from a cognitive place. We haven't actually necessarily tried all of these things, so be brave and try, see what works for you and see what doesn't, from an experienced position, not just from sitting and thinking about it.
Yeah, and honestly, I think that responsive is more of the norm, scheduling. Spontaneous is more of the exception. And if it happens, great.
Mm-hmm.
But to rely on that being the only way, I mean, the things that we prioritize, the things that are important to us, we schedule. In our capitalist society that's so driven on schedules and timing and times, if it's
Yeah.
in our calendar, it's important. If we schedule it out, that has importance to it. So
Yeah.
if sex is something that you want to have in your life, schedule it. And I also think that some of these norms I'm recognizing, because I'm saying this from a non-monogamous standpoint, a lot of these norms are really from a cis hetero monogamous normative viewpoint.
Right. You're scheduling everything. Everything is scheduled. I mean, not to say that I assume I'm going to have sex with my partner on every single date, but like that tends to be how it goes. Like we
Yeah.
schedule the night that we're going to spend time together. And
Or there's only certain nights that you would have sex with that partner because that's the days that you see them.
yeah. And here's an example of the spontaneity that can happen even with the schedule is like sometimes maybe like as soon as this person walks in, we decide to start having sex. Maybe sometimes we have dinner first and then we have a drink and then we have sex. Maybe sometimes like we go out first and then we like you can be spontaneous within the schedule. It's not like we're saying schedule it and then schedule what body part you touch first and then what you touch. Like no, like you don't have to make it boring just because it's scheduled. That's on you. If you make it boring because it's scheduled, you got to be a little bit more creative.
And for some people, that's super stimulating to be that detailed.
It's true. I committed the crime of yucking somebody's yum. If that's an accelerator, you fucking enjoy. You enjoy that script. I will not shame your joy.
Is it the top bottom thing? I feel like tops can really tops have a lot of work they have to do sometimes.
Yeah.
And doms put a lot of work into scenes and scenarios.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, like you said, it comes from, again, the cis hetero framework. It comes from our lack of sexual education, as I talked about earlier. It seems more and more like really great sex has a lot of thought behind it and a lot of communication and a lot of, I don't want to just say structure because it's not always structured in that, like I just gave the example of, but it's not this just spontaneous. We just know how our bodies work and it all works wonderfully. That just isn't the norm. There's a lot
No.
more planning and intentionality that goes on behind great sex.
No, and this idea when it's like, oh, well, it'll happen and it'll be natural. Or
Mhm.
even I want to take the word like quote unquote natural out of it.
Yeah.
Now, it is very much part of being human that most of us want to have touch and sensation in some way,
Mhm.
but how that is played out in different dynamics is up to the individuals.
Yeah. Totally. Totally.
And I think wrapping up and going back to that idea of we were talking about defining what sex even means for us or what sex is. Sex can be anything, especially in this technology day and age. I mean, oh my gosh, I know you're in a long distance situation right now. I've been in a long distance thing. And, is texting sex? Yes.
Right? Yeah.
You can
Yeah.
have all kinds of sex
Yeah.
in so many different ways through technology, through, all different places. And so I think the last thing I want to make sure and touch on, and we'll keep coming back to these concepts, and that's why I wanted to introduce these concepts right now at the beginning of the year in my little Virgo brain, because we will talk about these in other episodes, but having that basis. And I think, so the last thing or the concept to bring up specifically today that Emily Nagoski talks about, and she's actually going to be writing a new book, but she names 3 things in her research that really support long-term sexual connection with a partner. Again, this is very monogamous, so I'm just putting it out there, but I think it connects to all types of relationship styles. And the 3 pieces are, the first one is foundation of friendship. And she specifically talks about having that relational, like when things are going on, looking to that person, you're turning into them. You're turning towards them. You have that connection. You have that friendship basis, that baseline. The second one is, surprise, surprise, making sex a priority. Sex is important, making it a priority. The third piece, I'm just like, yes. The third piece is being outside and not being outside the box and specifically not buying in to gender binary roles.
Woohoo!
Yeah. And we talk about that. I mean, that third one, obviously, we've talked about before, and that can be a whole episode of what does it mean to not be relying on gender binary roles. And this is specifically with sex. And so the ideas of when we think about body parts, how we use body parts, how we interact with partners, how we interact with our own bodies, that not subscribing to that. So those are very key things that she identifies. And I'm just so happy because she is a white cis hetero female who has been married for many, many years. And to be saying that, because we're saying that all the time in the queer community, and I'm saying that all the time to cis hetero couples that I work with, but then to have this well-known sex researcher saying that, I'm like, yes, keep saying it. It benefits everybody.
Yeah.
Fuck gender binary. So on that note, yay, sex.
That feels like the culminating piece, right? Like, fuck the binary, yay, sex.
Yeah. That's how we wrap up for today. So, as usual, queer joy. What queer joy do we have going on for us?
Queer joy. Well, I realized I had said I may give a piece of an update that I never gave. So I will share, and it's part of my queer joy, that the gift I made was well received. And it was acknowledged the intensity at which I thought that, because I kind of built it up even as I was talking about it here. I'm like, it was a very intense gift, and that was very much acknowledged. And it seems like the timing within the context of our relationship was appropriate. So I'm grateful for that, because it was very vulnerable for me, and like just to normalize the way people's anxieties can work. Like I had many moments after giving this person this gift of panicking, about what I had just done. So
yeah,
that's definitely part of the queer joy / update, I guess. But no, really, I think leaning on my community has been the biggest takeaway for me in the last couple of weeks with all the changes to my plans. I needed help actually getting to rescue my cats from the boarding place because they are closed on the weekends, so I didn't have access to them. And Friday, the day that it was super snowing, was the only day I could get them. So I had my partner and my metamor actually came in, like they had a truck and came in, helped me through the snow, rescue my cats. So leaning on that community was super helpful. When I thought I was going to go back out of town for New Year's, I had other queer friends offer to help, take care of my cats. So once again, I'm talking about cats for my queer joy, because that is who I am and that is my life. But I will say my community really, really showed up for me, and I'm super grateful.
Yay.
Yeah.
My queer joy, what has been going on? My queer joy was being able to spend New Year's Eve. So New Year's Eve, I think I've already said this, but I'm just going to say it again. New Year's Eve is my favorite holiday, and New Year's Day. And I was able to smoothly have a relationship transition. And so I spent New Year's Eve with Leo, and very friend basis or friendship basis. And it was interesting to be in a very, very cis hetero like party. We ended up it was at a restaurant that we enjoy going to. It was super casual, fun, good DJ. And it was my queer joy is like it reinforced why I'm so grateful to be queer, because that's like just being surrounded. I don't remember the last time I've been with so many cis hetero men in like one area, and just getting to enjoy that, having my friend there with me and celebrating and just being around people. It was great. And I'm just like, oh, I'm so glad to be queer. So happy that I am who I am. So that's it for today. And we have a couple little plugs, but as always, you can find us on Instagram. We will be having our promotion coming up very soon. And so if you want some free gifts, check out our Instagram, post, share, like, tell us what you're thinking. It's a new year. Ask us some questions. What do you want to know more about sex? What do you want to know about relationships? Ask us. We'll do our best to answer them. Otherwise, check us out on all the platforms, and we hope you have a queer and joyful week.
Thanks for listening to Queer Relationships, Queer Joy, a podcast by the Connective Therapy Collective. Hosted by Keely C. Helmick and Melissa DeSegurant, with audio edited by Leigh Supapo Bernito. I'm your producer and behind-the-scenes buddy, Cardinal Marking. Intro music is by Bad Snacks. If this episode made you smile or think, tell us about it. If you hated it, tell us about that. Review us on iTunes or Spotify, or send us an email at media@connectivetherapycollective.com. Follow our Instagram at queer_relationships_queer_joy and find more resources on our website, www.connectivetherapycollective.com/queer-relationships-queer-joy. It's a lot of links. Just check the episode description. All right. Love you. Bye.